והחוכמה מאין תימצא ואיזה מקום בינה אשרי אדם מצא חוכמה ואדם יפיק תבונה מה רב טובך אשר צפנת ליריך פעלת לחוסן בך נגד בני אדם מה יקר חסדך אלוהים ובן אדם בצל כנפיך יחסיון ירבון ויון ודשן ביתך בנחל עדניך תשכין אשרי שירת אדוני במצוותיו חפץ מאוד יעלנו חסידים בכבוד ירננו על משכבותם המרחם על כל בריאותיו הוא יחוס ויחמול וירחם על נפש רוח ונשמה שנראה עזרא בניזה רוח אדוני תנחנו בגן עדן הוא וכל בני ישראל השוכבים עמו בכלל הרחמים והסליחות וכן ירצון
We have several speakers this evening. I'd like to get right started with the speakers. First, I'd like to introduce Rabbi Raymond Harari, who's a longtime friend of the rabbi and colleague, and rabbi of Dash Eliyahu. Avoid Rabbi Harari.
When I spoke last year at Rabbi Labaton's funeral, I really didn't know what it meant and what it means to lose a close friend. I spoke about the special person that he was and how I would miss him. But I had no idea what that really meant. If you'll permit me, I would just like to reflect for just a few minutes as a friend. And if my reflections bear any similarity to yours, I will be gratified. Over the winter months and into the summer, I missed him every single time that I made the left turn from 35 onto Deal Road and I approached the Magen of West Deal. In the beginning, I even tried to devise ways to avoid that route. When I entered the parking lot finally, I still continued to check to see if the spot that was bearing his name was vacant. And when I walked by his office door, I listened to see if there was some activity still there. Over the years, I had come to look forward to the summer weddings here in the Westfield Synagogue. Usually, we would stand together on the stage, somewhat off to the side, and despite the fact that a wedding was going on, we couldn't help but catch up on that day's activities, on our thoughts, on what happened yesterday, what happened last Shabbat, what would happen next week. I couldn't get used to this summer to his absence at these weddings. I missed him on Fridays during this past summer. In the past, for the last 10 years or so, I would finish a class in someone's home on Friday morning, and then I would meet him for a light lunch in the library. In true Rabbi Labaton fashion, we would eat a bagel and some egg salad or cheese. If it was a really particularly good day, there might be some leftovers from a Greek milah. The extravagant thought of leaving the synagogue to go out to lunch simply never entered his mind. I missed those Fridays this past summer and the other times when we would talk about his dissertation or mine, thoughts about retirement, thorny community issues, a Torah thought that he was working on or in the midst of formulating, a book that he was just about finishing, a class of mine or of his that we had just been proud of, some of his children, or one of his children that he was enormously proud of. He would speak about them so often. The enormous pressures that he had on his time, particularly during the summers, his longing for the time periods in his past, during part of his life, when he was able to grow and to dedicate time to growth spiritually and intellectually. My Friday afternoons this past summer were overly long and lonely. I missed him during those countless classes that I give in my synagogue, that I teach over the course, that I have taught over the course of this year, when I, at one moment or another, wanted to consult with him about something that came up in the class. It could be the Rambam, his beloved Rabbeinu Abraham ben Rambam, some aspect, some arcane aspect of Jewish philosophy, Peshat understanding of Tanakh, something of higher Jewish scholarship. When an issue like this would have arisen in the past, I would call him, we would speak, and sometime after an hour or two, we would finally get around to speaking about the issue that I had called him about. This year, I was on my own. There was nobody to fill that void. During the immediate weeks after his passing, I particularly missed him when some community members whom he had impacted on called me as if I was their rabbi. Like when a young man called me to explain a difficult situation he was having with his girlfriend's family, one that Rabbi Labaton was successfully mediating. Would I step in? Suddenly, I had to try to think like Rabbi Labaton. Or like when a parent called me to tell me about the hours of research, perhaps dozens of hours of research, that the rabbi had conducted into a situation involving his son's future marriage. Would I be able to complete the research? Or like when a family broke down, almost literally realizing that they had lost the single outsider in their lives who would be able to deal with their daughter effectively. Or like when a young man told me that Rabbi Labaton used to call his nearly 100-year-old grandfather almost every week before Shabbat. I missed him in moments of lapse when I thought of calling him to get his opinion or direction on some community issues, like saying Anna or Yehi Shem on a particular day. Or when a young man would have questionable lineage and we'd have to determine what to do. What to speak about on Rosh Hashanah. a reference for a young man that I knew, Rabbi Labaton knew very well, or how much time to leave for Mincha and Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur. I missed him every time that I heard that a high-pitched voice sang Borei Minei Samim at a wedding. When we had several couples over at our house at the beginning of the summer, and there was an odd number of people at the table, I missed him. When his granddaughter was born this past year, and I called Emily alone to say congratulations. When one of his children called me to ask me a question of halakha instead of asking their father, that really would be the right thing to do. When we were calculating the expiration of the 11 months and the 12 months, Emily and I and the children, and I had to think back to the conversations that we had about how to calculate exactly when the 11 months and 12 months would be over. Or when I prayed Musaf and Ne'ilah this past Yom Kippur, wearing that simple but precious white robe that he had worn just the year before in Magen David. Parashat Vayishlach tells us of the premature death of Rachel Imenu, who was giving birth to Binyamin, the final child of Yaakov, and of Rachel, of course. Yaakov intuitively realized that this was the end of an era. It was the loss of his beloved wife, the final child that he would have, and the beginning of a new era of resettlement of Eretz Israel. He therefore decided to build a matzevah, a monument, to signify that transitional moment, to remind him of the glory days, even as he knew that he had to move on, and he had to continue with the rest of his life. And after the Pesukim remind us of the lineage of Yaakov and then of Esav, immediately the next parasha begins by telling us that Yaakov's life resumed. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. And like Yaakov, we, and I speak intensely personally, I need to continue to build, to live, but to build a matzevah, one that would be able to cherish the memories of a very special person for all of us, a rabbi, a teacher, a relative, and most importantly for me, a lifelong friend. Like all of us, I will miss him.
The great storyteller, Hans Christian Andersen, tells the story of a traveler in a cold night who knocks on a door and asks for food. He's a soldier, just came back from war. He's hungry. And the people say, "We're sorry, you have no food. Time of war, we have no food." The soldier says, "Don't worry. I have a magic stone that can make soup. All I need is a pot and some water." That sounds good. They open the door, Tfadal comes in, they put the pot, they boil some water. Out of his backpack he takes a stone and puts it in the water and starts stirring. And after a while, he sips from the soup. It's going well, but I wish I had a pinch of salt. I'm sure you have nothing at home. No, we might have some salt. They get him salt. Then he needs some pepper. They get pepper. He tastes it again and he says, I wish we had a potato or something. They searched under the oven and they found an old sack of potatoes. And then they found carrots and onions. And when he asked if they have some meat by any chance, they realized that the father just came back from hunting and they have some game. And after a couple of hours, the big pot of stew is there for the whole family to enjoy. And he eats and is satisfied and he's about to leave. And they thank him. And they say, "What about the stone?" He says, "No, you can keep it. You can keep it." Many years ago, when I was sitting here with the rabbi, as he would usually do, during the parasha, between one oleh and another, never during the Kiriyah. He asked me a question. He says, why is Yaakov obsessed with stones? What is the place of the stone in Yaakov's life? And until last week, I didn't have an answer to his question. Every year we would get to this parashiyot and I would look at it and I say, you're right. Yaakov sleeps in Beersheba, he takes stones and he puts under his head. He gets up in the morning and he makes an even into a matzeva. He comes back from Haran when Lavan confronts him. Vayikach Yaakov Avin, vayiribeha matzeva. He builds a monument. Vayikra le'echav vayomer liktu avanim. He tells his entourage, you too, put stones here. Like the rabbi just mentioned, he put an even on matzevet kevurat Rachel adayom. And even on his deathbed, when he says the beracha to his son Yosef, he says, "Vateshev be'etan kashto vayafozu zeroi yadav midei avir Yaakov misham ro'e even Yisrael." His hands were strong, strengthened by the faith in the shepherd, the stone of Israel. What is this stone of Israel that Yaakov cares about? And it was last week when I had the privilege, the honor, to be at the family gathering and to hear the nieces and the nephews and the children speaking about the rabbi and realizing that I thought that I knew him, I knew nothing. There was so much that he gave to each and every person around him. But the way he gave it, I realized, was just like this magic stone in the soup. One of the nephews spoke about the $1.5 million project, and how he asked his uncle, why do you need to raise all these pennies? They're so heavy, they're going to break the floor is going to sink in your office. And the rabbi said, I want to have everybody involved. It's not about the money. It's about the participation. It's about the personal input of all these people who collect the pennies. They spoke about how every single event, no matter how insignificant it was for some, for him was amazing. And I recall the other word he liked to use, extraordinary, in one syllable. Extraordinary. Whatever it was extraordinary. And he really got you excited. That is what the rabbi did. Just like Yaakov plants stones wherever he goes. Those stones are mementos. Those stones are ways to trace back, to remember what he did here, what he did there, to remember that those are not just passing events, moments that are going to disappear, but precious memories. No moment wasted. It brings him back, but also for the people who received the stone from him, it serves like the magnet, like that soup stone. Collecting from them all the elements they had, they didn't know that they had. But all of a sudden they say, yeah, we have pepper, we have salt, we have vegetables, and we have meat. And let's put it together and something new is born. How many people had pennies rolling at home, in the car, and they had no meaning, those pennies? Who cares about a penny? But all of a sudden, Rabbi Labaton came and gave a meaning to the penny. It means a lot. 1.5 million of these represent the 1.5 million children who perished in the Holocaust. He gave meaning to those simple little objects, the pennies, but also to the huge objects, the heavenly bodies that are far away from us, that most of us don't even think about. But he said, did you think of the sun and the moon and Betelgeuse and the other stars that you don't even know their names? They all of a sudden had a meaning for us. This is what the rabbi did to people around him. He gave them little stones, little memories, questions, like the questions he asked me, like the question he asked you, like the moment of his precious time that he put into other people's lives, that he wanted them to remember, not to remember him, to remember that junction in time, what they did and why it was important and why it counts. And they look back and they realize that life had a meaning. It gave people meaning. And I know that he did it with all of us. All of us, the reason that we're sitting here is because we received something from him. Because he told us and he revealed to us that we have more than what we think. And we were lucky to be in his presence. And if there are people here who still don't know and don't appreciate what he gave them, look into your soul and memory and trace these stones. Trace these memories that he gave you. Cling to them. They're very, very precious.
כי מלאכיו יסבלך לשמורך בכל דרכיך. Hashem appoints angels to watch and guide you in your ways. To begin to reflect on Rabbi Labaton was not an easy task. As one of the first young congregants of Magen David, I was privileged to have Rabbi Labaton as a spiritual leader. As a young child entering his study, I could not believe how many books that he possessed in his library. If there was any topic of interest, whether it was the study of Jewish history, the rules of grammar to do, Be'or Tefillah, understanding Sidur, the rabbi had a shelf of books waiting to be explored. I would always leave his office with an excitement to learn, with many books in my hand, and to really dedicate myself to understanding our heritage. But it was not just his love for books, it was his love for people, especially the children of our synagogue. I will never forget how he always promoted the youth and chesed programs in the synagogue, always involved, not just him, but his whole family. Whether it was the YMB high school program, Yachad Shabbatonim, or the YMB Youth Minyan on Shabbat, it was imperative that every boy and girl attended these events. On a timely basis, he would always pass by our Youth Minyan to ensure that Ovadia or were involved in the Minyan, whether they were reading the Torah or the Chazani. Rabbi Labaton intended that our youth would become the future leaders in our community. As my high school teacher and rabbi, he encouraged me to take a leading role in the youth programming of our synagogue, to assume a leading role in Young Magen David, and to become an educator. As a child, I will never forget how he encouraged me to share the Divrei Torah with the adults during Sudash Rishit. When he would ask me, I would be shy. To get up in front of a group of people to share Divrei Torah, that was very difficult. But it became a reality. The rabbi was filled with joy. This would be the beginning of many future Divrei Torah that would be shared with adults and children alike. In 2004, I joined about 70 community members on a trip to visit the IDF in Israel. As many of you know, it was a very, very difficult year in Israel. Israel was struck by hundreds of terror attacks. There happened to be 4 terror attacks during the week of our arrival. Due to his condition, we were not sure if Rabbi Labaton would join our group. With his perseverance and the permission of his physician, his heart led this incredible experience. I will never forget how the rabbi was very excited to hand-deliver toys to young children suffering from the symptoms of cancer in the oncology department of the Hadassah Hospital in Yerushalayim. The world of Rabbi Labaton was about helping others in need, tzedakah mishpat. Whether it was packing Yad Eliezer canned food for the needy, or working on a tank base in the heat of the Negev, the rabbi was there in his army uniform, ready to go. On a side note, we conducted a shooting military exercise involving the firing of M16 machine guns. Of all the participants, he was the most accurate marksman. Amazing. In 2007, I was faced with a major decision of dedicating myself to the spiritual development of our community members. It was not an easy decision to make at age 27. And I remember walking into the rabbi's study with a very confused mind. And it's amazing, with his great smile and enthusiasm, he encouraged me to pursue Simicha. Watching me grow as a child, he knew that this would be a wise career choice. He was right. I thank the Rabbi for his encouragement in following my dreams. With all of his great accomplishments, he was successful in passing his Torah and love for Torah to our future generations. His famous pasuk, we all learned in high school, Ki dativ leman yitzaveh et panav v'beneh v'toach harav v'sham elu derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat. Perhaps Abraham was the one who was going to be the person who would go ahead and teach his children what's tzedakah u'mishpat, the same way Rabbi Labaton did. I would like to thank the Labaton family for their support. You have been very instrumental in my growth as a child and as a rabbi. I can assure that we are always there for you when you will need us. I know that we will share and live the Rabbi's legacy of the love for Torah, his community, and Am Yisrael. Teherani shnato surah b'sror Haim.
Amen.
I just wanted to add one note that there are several rabbis who grew up in this community, and Rabbi Mario Legnano, who was part of our rabbinic staff, gave a 2.5-hour class before our Tehillim reading on the rabbi's dissertation. I just want to acknowledge him as well. Thank you, Rabbi Mario. Now I would like to introduce Rabbi Saul Kassin and Rabbi Gheriani.
We read yesterday, Vayetze Yaakov ve'eshava vayelech Harana. And Yaakov Avinu departed from Be'er-Sheva and went to Haran. Rashi asks, why is there a need to mention that Yaakov departed, Vayetze? This that we're told that he went to Haran clearly means he departed from where he was. Why mention Vayetze? Why mention he departed? He answers that the Torah is stressing the impact of Yaakov's departure. Yetziat tzadik min hamakom oseh roshem. The departure of a righteous person makes an impression. There was a great void that was felt when Yaakov left. The Torah is expressing how much he was missed. While he was there in Be'er-Sheva, he was its magnificence. He was its splendor. And he was its beauty. When he left, its glory, its splendor, and its beauty departed with him. It's been 1 year since Rabbi Ezra Labaton, Rabbi Ezra ben Nizha, our rabbi, passed away. While he was here in this synagogue, in this town, in this community, he was its glory, its splendor, and its beauty. And now that he is no longer with us, we have lost our magnificence. We have lost our glory, and we have lost our beauty. It's not the same. The void is great and impossible to fill. The emptiness in our Beit Knesset and in our lives is felt. And as Rabbi Harari mentioned, there is so much about the rabbi that we miss. We miss the rabbi's unwavering commitment to decorum and dignity in the Beit HaKnesset. How he carried himself in the synagogue and expected and insisted others on doing the same. The Birkat Kohanim that he cherished and so loved to chant the Kohanim as they repeated after him. We miss the rabbi's shiurim and dirashot into which he put every ounce of himself. We remember as he gave the Shabbat Shuvah and the Shabbat Hagadol dirashot, how he used to have to take off his jacket and loosen his tie because he gave all his energy into those dirashot. His classes, intellectually stimulating.
They were a place where he was able to bring his students to think and imagine and question and to become educated, independent learners, and where we would hear him talk and quote his rabbis and mentors with such reverence and deep respect. We miss his thirst for knowledge, wisdom, ideas, and values. We miss having our youth of the synagogue and of the school connect to the rabbi with their questions and their dilemmas. It was under his watch that YMB, the social religious organization of the Jersey Shore, which produced future leaders of our community, was born and thrived. Today, YMB continues that great work. We miss his interactions with the seniors, his conversing with them in Arabic, both in the synagogue and in the center, and making them feel young again. We miss his rock-solid faith, his emunah and bitachon. He lived it and modeled it for all of us to see and to learn from. And he wore that faith on his sleeve. He had an unabashed pride for proclaiming his wonder and love for the Borei Olam and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for God's universe and his creations. And he wasn't shy about reminding us about our purpose and our responsibility in Hashem's world. We miss his great courage and strength in the face of a disease that never let up. His perseverance was incredible. It was remarkable. He rarely complained and barely missed any of his shiurim. He was like a Superman. We miss his tolerance and patience that he showed towards people. We miss the ability to see him converse with anyone and everyone on any subject matter. We miss his counseling, his advice, and his guidance, both to young and old, couples, business partners, and families. He was a confidant to so many. And we miss that bright white smile, that smile that lifted people, that encouraged others, and that just made you feel warm and comfort around him. The last time I saw that smile was right before the rabbi had gone back to the hospital. I went to the house, maybe to grab something there, and Mrs. Labaton allowed me to go into the living room for a minute, and he smiled at me. And he said, I was trying to reach you. I wanted to express to you my appreciation. He wanted to express his hakarat hatov. But in public, I want to thank the rabbi for everything he did for myself and for my entire family. We miss watching the rabbi with his children, how much nachat he received from each of them, Sarah, Devorah, Ovadia, and Mordechai, as they follow in the ways that he and Mrs. Labaton had taught them. Fulfilling the pasuk, Ki yeda'ati v'leman asher yetzaveh et banav, ve'et beto acharav v'shamiru derech Hashem asot tzedakah mishpat. For I have cherished him, because he commands his children and his household after him that they keep the way of Hashem, doing justice and righteousness. To Mrs. Emily Labaton, the Rabbanit of this Kahal, who helped shoulder the burden of the people and of this community, their concerns, their needs, for all those years partnering together with the rabbi. We are forever grateful to you as a kahal and as a community at large. And to Mrs. Doris Labaton, You raised a gem, and it's your credit. May Hashem give you long life, health, and satisfaction from all your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Amen.
Amen.
But mostly, we miss the rabbi's presence. What this kahal wouldn't do to just share one more tefillah with the rabbi, one more shibur. Yitziat Tzadik Ben HaMakom, Oseh Roshem.
I want to begin today by thanking the entire Labaton family for asking me to speak here today. It really means a lot to me. So easy it is to enter into an institution or a new world and leave behind your past convictions. Many enter a yeshiva setting and leave the traditions and customs of their parents and households at the doors of the Bet Midrash. Others enter a university and forget the beliefs they held as sacred at the door of their thesis advisor's office. This mentality is just so common today. Last year, Sarah and Deborah spoke so beautifully at the Ovadia about the unique ability of Rabbi Labaton to participate in multiple worlds. The rabbi, after all, was a fluid participant in the world of academia as a student of the great Nachum Sarna, in the world of modern orthodoxy as, of course, a student of Rabbi Saul, and in the world, of course, of Syrian and Sephardi Jewry. Even more beautiful and inspirational than his active participation in these worlds, the rabbi brought the lessons that he learned from each world and wove them together into a very beautiful and artistic creation. This revolutionary creation is the very fabric and material of the teachings of our beloved rabbi. While I'm excited to speak here about these fantastic accomplishments of the rabbi, it would not be fair to neglect an entire other aspect of the rabbi that we all much appreciated. This is the rabbi as a human being, as a father, a son, a husband, grandfather, an uncle, etc. Watching the rabbi in all of these positions was equally as enlightening as it was in the classroom or shul. Of the many things I learned over the years from the rabbi, one is the importance to recognize and not lose sight of underlying themes and trends. As the rabbi used to say, quote, "Don't miss the forest for the trees." The rabbi taught me these very themes found in Judaism. Of course, there was the one that everyone here quoted, from Bereshit Yudchet Yutet, that God was all about loving kindness, Zakal Mishpat. There was also his guiding philosophy of each person being created B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. The rabbi was able to adeptly point out that most things in Judaism revolved around these central pillars, and those who sacrifice these principles simply miss the forest for the trees. So easy it is for the modern Jew to get caught up in the subtleties of halakha that he or she loses sight of this. You, Rabbi, you were able to never lose sight of this. You treated each individual with such compassion and uniqueness that you acted consistently with your teachings. You blended the world of halakha with the world of human kindness. You sympathized so deeply with your congregants, and this made it so incredible an experience to go to you for a question. You made religion attainable to the commoner and lovable to all. You brought out the very best of Judaism, and you sparked the interest of thousands with it. Rabbi, there was not a disconnect between your teachings and your actions. With your lessons of Tzelem Elokim, you also taught me and countless others to be a social advocate as you were. The importance that you placed upon recognizing the infinite dignity of each and every person in this world was all transmitted to us. I saw you be an active participant in history. You would always speak of your time as an advocate for Soviet Jewry, culminating in your mission to the USSR, or your projects to benefit the needy in Darfur. You made me a socially aware citizen, one who cannot stand by in the face of injustice. You once told me at the time you wrote a letter to a black civil rights organization, pointing out to them that they unfairly attributed a quote on the top of their letterhead to the great Martin Luther King Jr., when really, it was a quote taken from the prophet of social justice, Amos. My takeaway from that story was not that you recognized the mistake of an organization, but rather that you received mail from organizations that help people that had no effect upon your life. You stood up for the human rights of others, as you taught us so beautifully. And then there was your love of knowledge. You were my first exposure to the world of philosophy and religion. Rabbi Labaton was the one who opened my eyes to the world of intellect. He gave me an appreciation for the world of critical thought. Day in, day out, the rabbi was the one who sparked my intellectual curiosity, challenging me on a daily basis. The rabbi would casually quote and easily discuss the thought of Kant, Maimonides, Heschel, Kierkegaard, Sartre, who he always pronounced in his thick Brooklyn accent, Sartre, Dostoevsky, Soloveitchik, and many others. He would constantly recommend books for me, and I would run home and go onto Amazon to order them used. I still have a nice list on the back of my Machshava notebook. The amount that you knew about these thinkers was astonishing, and yet you were so deeply enamored by our traditions. You applied the critical tools that modern philosophy taught you to our very own traditions and our texts, unraveling a new dimension of the study of Judaism that was unreachable to us in the past. And for this, I thank you. I recently read an article by 20th century thinker Elliot Braha in the book, of course, that the rabbi gave to me. Braha writes in one seminal essay that an effective rabbi of today must, quote, be deeply rooted in both historic Judaism and modern civilization. He must be a Talmid Chacham and a scientist, philosopher, or historian in one. Europe and Sinai must meet in his soul. Yes, Berkowitz was right, and yes, Rabbi Labaton was just this. However, the rabbi went above and beyond this. He mastered these two worlds and lived fully in both of them. However, there is a personal dimension that gets lost here. The rabbinic figure must be acutely attuned to the needs of his congregants. The rabbi had this dimension to him. He was equally intelligent. The rabbi had this dimension to him. He was equally intelligent in the dealings with people as he was with general knowledge. So easy it is for an academic or a halachic master to devote all his intellect in the room of study. Rare it is to find someone who has such equally high emotional and social intelligence as well as academic intellect. The rabbi knew when to speak, when to keep silent, when to intervene, when to sit back, when to fight for a social change, when to lift someone's spirits, when to cry, when to laugh. This blending of different kinds of intelligence produced this master personality that we all knew and cherished as our teacher. Rabbi, father, brother, husband, grandfather, and everything else. The rabbi's teacher, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, once famously discussed what it was like when he gave shiur, the very shiur that our rabbi was an active participant in. He says, quote, I start shiur. I don't know what the conclusions will be. Whenever I start the shiur, the door opens, and another old man walks in and sits down. He is older than I am. He is the grandfather. His name is Haim Brisker. The door opens quietly again, and another old man walks in. He is older than Rav Chaim. He lives in the 17th century. What's his name? Shabbatai Cohen, the famous Shai. More visitors show up, some from the 11th, 12th, 13th centuries, and some from antiquity. Rabbi Akiva, Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, the Ravad, the Rashba. More and more come in. What do? I introduce them to my pupils, and the dialogue commences. The Rambam says something, and the Ravad disagrees. Sometimes it's very nasty. The Ravad uses very sharp language. A boy jumps up to defend the Rambam against the Ravad, and the boy is fresh. Another boy jumps up with a new idea. The Rashba smiles gently. I try to analyze what that young boy meant. Another boy intervenes. We call upon the Rabbeinu Tam to express his opinion, and suddenly, a symposium of generations comes into existence. Generations. Young boys, 22 or 23, and my generation, the generation of Haim Brisker, the Shah, of Rabbeinu Tam, etc., etc. We all speak one language, we all chat. We all laugh and enjoy the company. We all pursue one goal, we all are committed to a common vision, and we all operate with the same categories. There is visceral collegiality, friendship, company between old and young, between antiquity and the Middle Ages, the unity of generations, this march of centuries, this conversation of generations, this dialogue between antiquity and present will finally bring the redemption of the Jew. Rabbi, this is what your classes felt like. You brought together opinions from a wide spectrum into one room. Torah and thought were active, innovative, and progressive. And now, Rabbi, you are part of our conversations. We will always allude to you and your opinions, continuing the conversation between generations. Part of what made the rabbi an outstanding pedagogue was his willingness to learn. You see, the rabbi was never too smart for anyone or anything. He always had this genuine interest to learn. This was seen in the way he listened to everyone. Of all the different images I have of the rabbi, the one that is so ingrained in my mind, is of him giving his undivided attention to another person, listening with a keen ear. It was almost as if that was the only thing going on in the world at the time. The rabbi always made it like you were the expert on something, and he was picking your brain about that, trying to glean some more knowledge. He would listen carefully with a fascinated smile, as my father would discuss new medical research, or a difficult surgery he had just performed. He would ask me about the status of the Jewish community in my college campus. He would inquire with my siblings about what it was like to contract with the American government. The list goes on and on. Thank you for listening. It really meant the world to me, and it really empowered me. Your relationship with your family was always so beautiful to me. Emily, Mrs. Labaton, I used to love when your husband would talk about you in the classroom setting. It was always so clear how much respect you both had for each other. Sarah, Laura, and Ovadia, as you all know, more than I do obviously, your father would always talk about the sheer brilliance and fantastic personality of his children. This is obviously the case with you guys. And Mordecai, of course, I am separating you because you were closest. Your academic achievement, as well as your constant regard for humanity and social justice, never ceases to amaze me. You guys are all exactly what the rabbi stood for. And this, I am sure, made him so proud. Thank you all for being in my life. Rabbi, I looked forward to discussing the new books of philosophy I have read throughout college, or the new perspectives I have about Judaism. I eagerly awaited the day where I would be intellectually mature enough to argue with you about how to deal with the problem of evil or the future of Judaism. I imagined you announcing upon this very pulpit, the Shabbat before my Aliyah to Israel, about how proud you were of me. I saw my wedding flash by, with you front and center under the chuppah, speaking of me, of my family and me. Nobody will ever be able to fulfill all of these roles that you filled in my life. Yes, perhaps one person will fulfill one, and another will fill another. However, you, Rabbi, were the only one who is in all of these simultaneous worlds. Instead, when these milestones in my life happen, I will see you. I will see you sitting in that chair with your legs crossed, your hand clasped, resting your strong chin upon your knee, listening and smiling.
The next speaker, we all have to give a special thank you, because we now, with a click on the phone, we could get onto a website and we could hear the rabbi's lessons and shurim, tens of them, hundreds of them, and we could participate in so many different things. We could actually keep the rabbi very much alive through this website. And I'd like to call upon Joey Tabush, who was instrumental in creating this website, along with Richie Dweck, the Dweck family. Can't thank you enough for the work that you've been doing to keep the rabbi's lessons alive, and a live voice alive. Joe.
Thank you. How does one fill a void that cannot be filled? What words can be used when no words suffice? Just like everybody else, I had a special, unique relationship with Rabbi Labaton. He was my rabbi, my teacher, my mentor, and my friend. And he redefined each one of these roles in his own unique way. I would like to speak today about the impact the rabbi had on me and how that has led me to spending the past year pouring through his library and endless boxes of classes and notes. I am awed by the stories and memories that have been shared. How can one person maintain such meaningful and personal relationships with so many people? The adjectives we use to describe him are not hyperbole or overstatement. Incredible. Amazing. Last year, as we mourned the rabbi's passing, these incredible stories that continue to be told highlighted the void he had left behind. I remember going to pay respects. I told Emily I had so many things I wanted to share with the Labaton family. Write a letter, she asked. So I went home that night, and every night for the following month, and tried to write something but couldn't. I recalled his role and impact on so many different parts of my life, but could not find the right words. One of the Torah's ideas the rabbi spoke about most and exemplified daily was man's creation, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. He often said that he once saw a t-shirt he wished he bought. It said, "I know I'm someone special because God don't make no junk." How pure his character was, always finding value and beauty in every person. It was this quality that enabled him to form the relationships he did. He never gave his thoughts or opinions without carefully considering his audience. What is this person really asking? Where is the window in which to capture the mind, or in other cases, the heart? He taught us that IQ encompasses more than just the intellect. One must also possess a strong moral IQ and emotional IQ. What struck me most about his ability as a teacher was his enormous range, be it a room of academics or a classroom of children. The rabbi taught via his model for impacting the world through Torah study. His goal was to creatively open spiritual doors and dimensions, that as individuals and collectively as families, we should share a vision of what Judaism is all about. He taught that Torah would ultimately lead us to achieve a vision of our place in the world. Growing up, the rabbi and Emily formed a bond with my parents that brought Torah values into our home and showed me what it meant to find yourself a rabbi. From my bar mitzvah to my wedding to the births of my children, the rabbi was there. When I moved to Brooklyn, I saw the rabbi less, but always kept in touch. I went to his classes when possible and called him in between. His perseverance and endless devotion to his students were awe-inspiring. When I had a question about Judaism or just about life, I called the rabbi. He always had the appropriate message at the right time. We spoke about religion, family, history, and philosophy. The philosophy conversations in particular excited him the most. When he spoke about working on his thesis, he expressed an intellectual love. Instead of reading or studying, he used terms like getting to know the Rambam and spending time with the Rambam's son. When I asked him about Spinoza, the excitement almost jumped through the phone. Spinoza, he's a good friend of mine. His passion defined everything he did. With each question I asked, he responded not with an answer, but with a question of his own, always challenging me to think critically. With each phone call, he gave me a list of books to read and asked that I please call him again soon. Between calls, I listened to some of the rabbi's classes that were around online. Rabbi Harari had a few dozen on his website, as did David Batesh. We continued our intermittent phone calls, and I did my best to read what I could. Last October, at his suggestion, I began reading Principles of the Jewish Faith by Louis Jacobs. The rabbi had misplaced his old out-of-print copy. He was so excited when I found 2 used copies online, and he couldn't wait to reread and discuss it. Despite his condition worsening, he urged me to continue calling him. I had grown used to seeing the rabbi persevere time after time. I was spoiled by his strength. I was not prepared for the end. For so many years, we looked to him to guide us through difficult times, both personally and as a community. Here we were, without our leader. Feeling this void, I gave up on writing the letter for a while and went back to reading the book we had begun. With each chapter, I was left with questions and talking points I wish I could address. I thought back to the earlier conversations we had, and I imagined his response to each new thing I had to say. I imagined the challenges he would issue, and I felt the pressure to make sure I was thinking critically. I thought about the reading list I kept on my phone, which by this point had a few dozen books I hoped to one day read. This was the rabbi's way of attacking a subject, to be a fearless reader, to read the widest spectrum of books he can find on any given topic, to pursue truth without boundaries. I began listening to more of his classes online. If we couldn't have our conversations anymore, at least I'd listen to some old classes I had missed out on and absorb whatever of his wisdom was available to me. I listened to him reinforce his famous ideas, ideals, and values. Every part of Torah fell under this umbrella. He pursued his mission of tikkun olam through chesed, tzedakah, and mishpat. He sought to build a model with which to impact the world. He had no idea the reach of his model. Around this time, Bobby Dweck and his son Victor had created the first draft of RabbiLabaton.com, where they began posting tributes that were being sent in. I offered to help, having no idea at the time the treasure that would await. Together with Bobby and his brother Richie, we collected as many audios as we could. Richie went through hundreds of them, listening to each, categorizing, and posting on the website and to iTunes. To date, these classes have been downloaded nearly 10,000 times in over 30 countries. Indeed, the impact of the rabbi's ideas, ideals, and values continue to spread in concentric circles. While listening to the classes, whenever he recommended a book, I added it to my list. A little while later, I posted the list to the website, calling it The Rabbi's Bookshelf. The response was fitting. Dozens of people wrote in with more titles to add. As the list grew, I eventually asked Emily if I could help archive the rabbi's entire library. I had not been in the rabbi's office since the shul was renovated. There's only one thought I could imagine somebody having when walking in. Wow. For those unfamiliar, the best way to describe it is just to say there are books everywhere. From floor to ceiling, wall to wall. No windows, just a door to get in, and bookshelves everywhere else. When he couldn't fit any more on the shelves, he made stacks on the floor. If I had to take a guess, there's at least 2,000 books in there, maybe more. Each organized by topic, with his favorite topics in the bookcases closest to his desk. Even now, the only thing I can think is wow. This word, this feeling, wow, was a favorite concept of the rabbis. Wow meant you were stricken emotionally and that you understood the impact of the moment. He taught me that if you don't say wow, you're missing what it's all about. The impact of the room was so overwhelming that before touching anything, I had it photographed. The panorama pictures, which are on the website, are mesmerizing. Papers overflow each shelf. Articles accumulated over the years, clipped together with relevant books. Each book's binding is worn for multiple readings, and many have their margins filled with 4.5 decades of the rabbi's notes. His desk, the scattered, variable mess, is a mark of genius. As I begun to sort through his archives, my wows became even greater. Every article, newsletter, and notice from various rabbinical councils was covered with his notes. He underlines key points, left comments where he disagreed, and graded them as he would his students. The very best articles were marked excellent at the top. And there were thousands of them, dating back to the 1970s. Oh, remarked Emily almost casually, he didn't like to throw things out. And that was just the articles. Then she showed me his file cabinets, filled with his speeches, every single one for 30 years. She was right. He never threw anything out. Most people who speak publicly would say that after 30 years, they can write a speech in their sleep. Not Rabbi Labaton. Always seeking to excel and to perfect his craft, he labored over every speech. He cherished each opportunity to challenge us, to engage us, and to guide us. His form was consistent, always handwritten, on 11 by 14 legal paper with the date in the top left corner and the parashah and the topic in Hebrew at the top. Always 2 pages, no more, no less. Each unique in content, but uniform in sincerity and wisdom. He also kept the notes from every shiur, not only those he gave, but also those he attended as a student himself. I remember going through them this summer, seeing the smile on Emily's face when she found the rabbi's notes from a class given in 1978 by Rev Soloveitchik. This was a great class, she thought with a smile. But unlike someone who stockpiles things for the sake of accumulation, the rabbi's library and archives represent a discourse of brilliance, a testimony to his unwavering commitment and unshakable standards of intellectual honesty. Having the privilege to work on such a project has shifted my perspective. I now focus less on the void, for everything the rabbi gave us is nothing short of a treasure. As for the words I seek, I once again look to my teacher. Rabbi Labaton had an array of adjectives to describe amazement. Extraordinary, outstanding, fascinating, incredible, awesome. But when I reflect on his impact, even these words do not suffice, for they disrupt the beautiful silence that echoes when all I can think is wow.
I thank you for your patience. There are 2 more speakers, me and Mrs. Elliot Braha. L'chvod harabanim, Emily, Sarah and Gabi, Ovadia, Laura and Micah, Mordecai, Grandma Doris, Sisters Robin and Sari, the entire Labaton family. Early every morning and late every night, and especially for me, every Shabbat morning, as I enter this main sanctuary, I listen to the silence. This past year, I hear a different silence, sounds of silence. Then all of a sudden, the sounds come alive, and I hear the sounds of the voices, the different voices of our dear beloved Rabbi. Listen with me. I hear the voice, the pure, sweet, singular, childlike voice of the Rabbi saying, Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom, greeting me. I hear the sound of the Rabbi's prayer, often rapid, precise, sometimes a blurred articulation, sounds of Torah reading, quick, of daily classes, Shabbat and holiday Derashot. I hear amazing. I hear wow. I hear extraordinary. I hear good news for the Jews. I hear Marabu Ma'aseta Amonai, Kulam Bechokma Asita. I hear you have reached Congregation Magen David of Westfield, office of Rabbi Labaton, the rabbi's answering machine. I hear the high-pitched, sometimes singing off-key, Romeo, as the Sefer Torah circles the Beit Knesset. I hear, have a great day, in his voice, sending the Kahal he served devotedly into the workaday world every day. I hear, that's a wow, again, at a point of halachic wonder in a breakfast class, over 30 years ago. I hear the rabbi's voice, the
The sounds of the rabbi as he officiated life cycle events, B'nai Milah, Bar and Bat Mitzvah, weddings, and happy occasions about children and grandchildren. And also, unfortunately, I hear the sounds from of funerals or eulogies that he gave. On both occasions, on the weddings and the mitzvot, he somehow uniquely portrayed our parents and grandparents, our children and grandchildren. The sounds of his unique kiddush and the ability to capture personalities under chuppah, his perceptive understanding of the importance of relationships between parent and child, husband and wife, friend and friend. I hear a call, a voice on Rosh Hashanah, a humble, meek, quiet voice, which trembles and cries before the awesomeness of the moment of representing us before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in moments of repentance and teshuvah, weeping at the gravity of the responsibility. And I hear the rabbi's sound of shofar, his inner breath resounding through the instrument of his shofar. Again, clear, crisp, powerful, but humble, arousing yet calming. I hear his voice as he recites Birkat HaKahal, the prayer for us, a sincere, authentic call for ahava ve'achva, shalom ve'ut, love and brotherhood, peace and friendship, the basic values of community. These and many more we have all heard throughout the years. How long will these sounds reverberate and resound in us? Years, months, days, or will they be muted, suppressed, and chas v'shalom forgotten? Every Motzei Shabbat, during the winter months, a group of us learned about issues of science and religion. We learned about the Big Bang, and how scientists heard that event billions of years later as a slight radio pulse or beeps on a monitor. With the rabbi looking at his entire life, we've heard a Big Bang, yet this sound didn't start out as a Big Bang. It started slowly and gained volume throughout the decades. Now, as we move further and further away, the sounds of the rabbi's life lessons are dissipating slowly. How soon will they fade? When in the future will we need the sensitive, precise instruments to pick up the remaining signal? But you see, this whole metaphor of Big Bang doesn't really apply to our rabbi. Because the rabbi's ways were always the ways of peace and harmony, dafei noam, the ways of Torah, pleasant, never a Big Bang. Because he believed in bringing us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in small steps, gradually and ultimately more profoundly. The rabbi withstood criticism from many corners, but his response was always quiet, guided by humility, with the force and conviction of reaching resolution in positive ways. He never lost focus of his goals. His life calling and message were embodied in the idea of Selim Elohim, the intrinsic value and dignity of every human being, and in the potential to achieve great heights of knowledge and creativity. His acts of chesed, represented in the several projects he spearheaded, built a community of people, us, who joined him on this journey. He quietly led a life of chesed. He visited the ill, consoled the widow and orphan, and counsels so many of us to behave properly to our spouses, children, parents, and friends. He directed Chesed projects here in Israel and around the world. Yahad, cancer research, kidney transplants, Magen ambulances, Sefer Torah for Croatia, the Penny Project, which actively engaged so many of us and etched the memory of 1.5 million children perished in the Holocaust. He dragged us to Washington to politic and protest. He created a vibrant community that extended beyond Westfield, a community that lives today in each and every one of us who has ever had a point of contact with our beloved Rabbi. This community, however, was not created alone. By the Rabbi's side all these years have been Emily and his family. The Rabbi consulted with Emily and looked to her as they charted this journey together, using as their coordinates the principles of tzedakah and mishpat, justice and righteousness, along with compassion and empathy. Our precious rabbinic couple modeled this life and helped us navigate the course of life for over 30 years. They educated our children and grandchildren in school and in synagogue. They created programs, social, religious, and educational. And now, those programs are even taken for granted. We are so grateful as a Kehillah for what the Rabbi has done, and you, Emily, for what you have and will continue to do. Before I conclude, I would like to step out of my role as president of Kehillah Magen, the public role, and say a few words just as Elliot. Rabbi, I remember third grade. The Magen Yeshiva, I remember the first day you came into our class, all the way through 8th grade. I remember days reciting Torah with you and learning together. I even remember your punch bowl hitting style. I remember summers at Bradley Beach, days of youth and friendship, all through high school. Later, you and Emily brought my family and me here and changed our lives. You brought us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Torah Mitzvot, and involvement in community. I know you admired my corner jump shot, and even my academic achievements. And in one embarrassing moment, you spoke to me at the breakfast class. Rabbi, you should know that I so admired you all these years and respected you. All you achieved as a teacher, a rabbi of this community and of my family, and yes, I admired the achievement of your PhD, especially because you persisted for 30 years to complete it. I admired and admire you far, far more. There are two more voices, kolot, I hear. One is a sound, a rapping knock from Shir HaShirim, Kol Dodi Dofek. It is the sound of a rendezvous that must not be missed, a sound of potential that must not be wasted, a sound of arousal that must not be ignored. It is the sound of HaKadosh Baruch Hu calling out to us, and of you, Rabbi, who transmitted that message to us, for us to join in the experience of a special nation, an Am Segulah, a kingdom of servants, Mamlechet Kohanim, and a distinct holy nation, Goy Kadosh, a nation that cares for the needy, oppressed, and the troubled, and a people who follow the path of justice and righteousness. The other voice is the still, quiet voice, called the Namadaka, the sound of silence. the inner voice of compassion and gentleness that we hear very early in the morning and late every night, perhaps as we enter sleep, or maybe still as we hold our children and grandchildren in our arms and listen to their breath or their cry. We will always associate this voice, this sound of silence, with our beloved Rabbi Ezra Labaton. Yehi Zechro Baruch.
So, I would like to go back to the Teherani with which we started this Arayat. When we led an Arayat, Ezra saw the reading of Teherani as the centerpiece. And as many of us have experienced, he interspersed the readings with commentary on the word of Teherani. He believed that we read Teherani and Arayat to relieve the loneliness of our grief, to remind us that we are not alone in our despair and our confusion. When we read the many Teherani in our daily prayers, we can't easily identify with the emotions of these words. We have not had the experiences which provoke them. We may never have those experiences. But our exposure to the full range of Teherani expands our own repertoire of feelings and should make us more empathetic to the range of feelings that humanity experiences. He loved Teherani. He analyzed it with the tools of biblical scholarship and through the eyes of rabbinic interpretation. But he also believed in the power of reciting the words, never in a magical way, but because reciting the beautiful musical poetry and the deeply humane words had an impact on our humanity. He spoke of Teherani as full of contradictions, and he always embraced contradictions, which he felt led us to truer understanding. The contradictions. Teherani expresses the appreciation of the universal, that all human beings, no matter what race, religion, nationality, are created in the image of God. And at the same time, Teherani expresses the fierce loyalty to the Jewish people, its unique responsibilities and gifts. Teherani expresses the humbling awareness of man as an insignificant speck in the vast universe, just a tiny unit in creation. And at the same time, a vision of man as just short of the divine, of infinite value and with the power to shape the destiny of the world. Teherani speaks of God as majestic, all-powerful creator of all nature, even its most destructive forces. And as well, Teherani evokes an image of God in intimate relation to mankind, to whom we whisper our innermost yearnings. Teherani speaks of God who created the world and continues to create the world with perfection. We love to speak about that. And also God who hides his face and allows tragedy and pain to infuse his world. Teherani describes mankind when we feel happiness, joy, fulfillment, and love. And as well, Teherani describes exquisitely almost the individual who feels rejected, lonely, defeated, and even abandoned by God. Teherani has moments where it declares absolute certainty and empowers us to act on beliefs. And at the same time, Teherani describes mankind who ultimately lives in constant questioning, confusion, and doubt. Teherani is an expression of mankind's infinite, magnificent gift of speech, the ability to communicate the most abstract, profound ideas. But Teherani is also an expression of mankind's injustices of life. When reading Tehillim, as we will talk about King David, the powerful warrior, emperor, leader par excellence, who reveals himself in this poetry at his most insecure, fragile, and describes the moments when he confronts his failures, both personal and national. As we saw these moments in David's life, his honesty and his ability to confront his own weakness as the pinnacle of his leadership. As we saw Tehillim as a source of comfort, but also a source of challenge. He believed that reading Tehillim helped us to understand God, humanity, and the world around us. More important than Tehillim asks and inspires us to introspect and to understand ourselves more profoundly. And perhaps most important and most difficult, Tehillim demands that we use our awareness of the world and of our own emotions to empathize with others, to stretch beyond the boundaries of our small selves to appreciate the other, to appreciate the greatness of humanity but also its weaknesses, to share the joy of others but also the sadness of others, no matter how uncomfortable it makes us. One more theme that permeates Tehillim, the theme of thanks. And who was so good at that? Many have shared notes that he wrote to them, thank you notes. And he sometimes, when appropriate, shared notes with me that were written to him. Sometimes I find these notes when I open books. It seems so simple and so obvious to express thanks. But the most important thanks are so difficult because they can barely be expressed in words. He was blessed with close, deep, often lifetime, but also more recent friendships. People with whom he laughed and cried, who took care of him when he was ill, in the most incredible ways, who were present for him in every way, and through their sadness, continued to take care of my children and me this year. He was blessed with the most incredible family. And last Sunday, when we all, from the youngest to the oldest, read Tehillim together, we felt the power of that family and the incredible gift. And to me, it's one of the most incredible gifts that he gave to me. But he also created friendships in all his relationships. Friendship in all his relationships. And most significantly in Shul, with so many, in ways that I know or knew, and in ways that I have come to know over the past year as people share snippets and moments and conversations which they had had with him. He was awed by people and saw, again, the word came to be the amazing in all the facets of people's lives. He cared deeply for people and learned from everyone he met. And so, I thank all of you for the friendship that you gave to him. It filled his life with goodness, it made his leadership joyful, and it made being a rabbi a career of wonder, connection, wisdom, and constant learning. The last chapter of Tehillim. In the last chapter of Tehillim, we run out of words. Even in this book, it is really full of the most exquisite words. But in the last paragraph, we fill the emptiness with music. Because there is an awareness that at certain points, words are not effective enough. To my own children, my thanks to you are of their nature and too intimate to share, perhaps. Thank you for being there for me.
بنا أشري دامت حكمة بدام يفيك تبنا مررت بخاشرة فانتريخا بعد لحسن بال نجد باليدام بين حد إلهيم وبين الدم بتلك نفيخ يحسيون يرمون بيون بالديش بتلك بناحل عدليك تشكيل أشري شريت دناي بمتوتاي حفيت مئون يعلنوا حسدي بخبود يرننوا عالمشك بوتان أنا رحيم عالكل بريوتان يحوس بيحمل برحيم النفش روح شباب شنباب عزغاب بنيزا روح أدوان تنحين بغنعيد بقلب إسرائيل هشوف عمو بخلال رحميم بسنحوت بخلال